Okay. Hello everybody, and thank you for having me here. My name is Tara, and I'm a consultant freelancer. And basically, what I do is I run innovative projects. So that can be a wide range of things. I'm not a UX designer, so I just want to say that now, so you know. But I do work with projects, and I have through my whole career where user experience and user interface and design is a big part of it. So I have been around you guys. Tonight I'll probably be giving you a slightly different perspective. I'm going to talk about a project that I did that was doing a startup using the lean startup method. And so I learned a lot, and so basically that's what I'm here to talk to you about today. The project was with Sanoma Media, and some of you may know Sanoma as a name that's familiar to people. If you haven't heard of Sanoma, you've probably heard of things that they do. So they're a large publisher, the largest publisher in the Nordic countries. They're in 10 countries. They have brands like Libella, Marie Claire, they do Playboy, they have some TV channels, SBS, and Veronica. They're also behind New.nl, which I'm sure everybody knows about. It's one of their biggest things. And FashionChick.nl and other apps. So they approached me to work on this project, and it was an interesting project. Basically, Sanoma, even though they have these digital projects that they're doing in apps, they are a traditional print publisher. And like most traditional print publishers realize, print is dying. So they need to find a new way to do things, a new way to get revenue, and a new way to get their content out there. One thing that they're doing is that they are looking inside of their company for ideas. So they started their internal ventures program. So they have two kind of ventures. They have their external ventures where they fund startups that are sort of out in the world. And they also have their internal ventures program. It's an internal accelerator where they have the people from all their different locations. They're in Poland, and they're in Hungary, Russia, Finland, Netherlands. They ask everybody inside the company who has an idea for a company or for a product to submit it to this accelerator. So they have maybe, by the time they get all the submissions, there's maybe 150 people that get accepted to an accelerator. And over like 9 weeks or so, they have a weekly webinar where they're teaching them how to get their product idea more clear, how to identify their target market, how to really make sure they have their pitch down. And they whittle it down week by week, kind of like Dragon's Den or something, or like a reality show basically. And at the end, they pick the best, a pool, they narrow it down to maybe a short list of 10. And then they come for this here in Amsterdam, which is a boot camp for 3 days, where they actually create a minimum viable product. They pitch their ideas, and the 3 ideas get chosen. And of those 3, the people actually get to leave their jobs at Sanoma, become a founder of this startup. They have a budget, and they get to try to, for a year, try to get this thing off the ground with the support of Sanoma. And then if it doesn't work, they get to go back to their old job. So it's actually a really sweet deal. Yeah. So I thought that was really cool that they do that. So they're definitely into entrepreneurship. They asked me to come in and help them in this process because they had a product that they wanted to do that. Picture of the second screen. That's what it was. A second screen app that they want to do. And that this didn't come up through the company, but they wanted to actually put it through the same process. So second screen, you've probably heard of it. It's talked about everywhere. But there's different types of second screens. And so there's some that content is actually coming through on your device instead of the TV. There's ones that are specific for TV shows, or you can follow along with the TV show, and other kind of general second screen apps. And so what they wanted me to do was more of a general second screen app to provide information for the Dutch TV market to start with. So I got to be in with these entrepreneurs and start my own startups.
How old are you now?
No, there was a picture missing, yeah. So the other startups that I was with are with Beauty Tale, which was an app to recommend beauty products. And then there's UCourse and Clip School, which are e-learning products. And then there's Tita Toys, which is another online children's toy product. So all of us were sort of the ones that were doing the startups together. And so one of the big benefits of these startups is that you get a budget, you get funding, but you also get to use the resources of Sanoma behind you. So their legal team, you can use their marketing expertise, IP, legal, so it really helps to give kind of a leg up on what they're doing. And another thing is they get to actually run it the way they want to. Like, it's actually really their company. So they can even start a separate office, go off-site. So it was great. So here's an example of a type of a second screen. And so with my product, the reason they wanted to explore second screen is because there's a lot of data coming out about how many people are using their devices while they're watching TV. And so, of course, from a publisher's perspective, that's something that they want to get a hold of, because that's a lot of eyeballs, that's a lot of potential for advertising, that's a lot of potential for reaching an audience. But everyone's wondering, how do we capture this audience? So what we wanted to do is we wanted to prove and see, of course, what happens with publishers and people with products sometimes is they would like their product to be out there, but do the users actually want this product? Does anyone really want it? So that's what we set out to test. And if it was successful in the Dutch market, then we would go and do some other markets like Russia and Germany. And so my job was to come in and see if there really was a market for this product and recommend whether Sanoma should actually put big money into it or not. And so one thing that also attracted me to this project is that we were using the lean startup method. And is anyone familiar with the lean startup method and the startup weekend? And yeah, so I was really interested that a company like Sanoma would want to go buy the book Lean Startup. And so basically, as some of you know, it's a scientific approach to creating and managing startups. Basically, the premise behind Lean Startup is that every startup is a grand experiment in answering a question. And the question is not, can this be built? Because, unless it's a teleporter or a time machine, it can be built. Most things can be built. The thing that you really need to answer is, should we build this? And so, because most startups fail, not because they couldn't build a product, but because they built a product that no one wanted. And so my task was to do the customer discovery phase, which is the very first phase of the Lean Startup. And the point of the customer discovery phase is to ask more questions. One of the questions is, have we identified a problem that the customer actually has? Is this an actual problem that the customer wants to see solved? And if so, does our product solve it, this customer problem or need? And if so, and this is one of the most important parts, is there a viable business behind it? Because you can answer those first two questions yes, and there can still be no business model behind it. And the other interesting thing about this is that this is before you even really build anything, a real product. So, of course, that brings in some interesting, UX questions and challenges. It's how do you not build something and find out if people want it, and how do you deal with that from a UX perspective? But what's important to know is that through this process, we weren't through the testing and things that we do. You're not really testing the UX specifically. You're testing the idea. So that's where the challenge comes in. And one thing that the Lean Startup process really emphasizes is getting out of the building. So anyone that's been a startup weekend is heard this one. They make you get out there. And the premise behind this is that facts only exist outside of the building. And I know as UX designers, you're probably into this too. You know that you have to actually get people to look at your designs, use your designs to understand how they're going to interact with it. And it's the same with a business or a startup. If it's, you have to go actually talk to the customers as a founder to really understand firsthand, what their feedback is, because that's where you can really find out the nuances and get new ideas and figure out ways that you might need to pivot, which is different than what larger companies might do, which is do surveys, do large data gathering, where you're not even actually able to interact with the real customers. So that was another thing that we did that was important. And another great thing was the project documentation was very small, which is critical to allowing you to move quickly, make decisions, change your mind if you need to, and not spend a lot of time on keeping up the documentation that's just going to change anyway. So our main document that we kept up was, this is called the business canvas, and some of you may have seen this too, but it helps you basically to outline your key partners, key activities, customer relationships, things like that, and you can easily change it as you go on. So this was the only documentation that we really had to keep up, which is great. So before we even had a name, before we even knew exactly what our second screen app was going to be, we did some research on competitors. And you can learn a lot about your business idea by just looking at what other people have done. And another thing is, if you don't find any competitors, at first it seems like that's great. Oh, there's no competitors, we can get in there. But if there are no competitors, you have a problem, because that means that if no one else has ever thought of it, there might be a problem with the idea. So keep that in mind. One of the apps that we looked at was ZBox. And has anyone heard of ZBox? Okay. It's mainly in the UK and the US. And one of the people from BBC iPlayer started it. And basically it's very similar to what we were thinking of. It just gives you general information about the programs that are on. So there's Twitter feed. If somebody mentions something in a program, it gives you information about it. But interestingly, this company has a lot of backing. They have a lot of exposure. And even though their numbers aren't public, the last figure that I could find as of last summer was they had maybe around 5 million downloads since their launch. And for something as big and general as this, that's actually not that many downloads. And someone else found, they were at a presentation and they saw some figures that they had maybe 50 to 100K users at their peak time, which is also not very many. So that was interesting to see what kind of traction that they were getting. And then there's SBS 6 Plus. Now, has anyone heard of this app? But you've heard of SBS, the channel, of course? Yeah. SBS is owned by Sanoma. So I got to talk to the people in depth who are developing this app. And it's like ZBox and like what we're talking about, except it's more specific to certain SBS shows. And they also give you extra footage. They have cameras that are on site, things like that. So it's actually really engaging and entertaining. But even with that, they have on average maybe 5,000 active users if they're lucky. So that was, again, something else interesting. The difference for them, too, is that for their business model, they don't really have to be profitable. I mean, they're there to just help enhance the SBS brand. So that's looking at that kind of model is helpful, too. And then there's Remotely TV. This is also based in the Netherlands. And they do a similar kind of thing that we were talking about doing, but it's an automated system. Just like ZBox, the information that comes out is very automated. And so we noticed that you can tell it doesn't feel human when you're looking at it, like that you're really connecting with something. It's just pulled whatever word they found about whatever town and give you the Wikipedia article. So with Remotely TV, it was similar. It's automated, and what's seeing about them is that they stopped being a consumer product, and now they're more interested in selling their engine to other apps. So they are also not on the consumer side. So that was all helpful to know. And then there's the Voice of Holland. I got this slide from somebody who had seen a presentation that they gave. And Voice of Holland is a very popular TV show. Whenever it's on, it's one of the most popular shows in the Netherlands. And they have a specific second screen app. And even for them, if you look, like it starts out with the number of watchers, people, their audience, all the way down to downloading, to using, opening, and using it multiple times. And so it goes from 4.2 million down to 50,000 or so, which again, when you're talking about monetizing something from a perspective of having a lot of users, that's actually not that many for something that's even as popular as this. So that was all interesting for us to know as we were going into trying to create this. And we haven't created anything yet, so it's okay. We haven't spent anything. So we're still looking to see if we should, each one of these is a gate to see if we should go forward. So then you do the normal things that you do, look at your market, do your market research. So in the Netherlands, there's about 5 million TV viewers per day during prime time. So that's your entire largest audience that you could even hope to reach. And then the served addressable market, which is within that, who you might be able to capture even more. And according to different figures, we found, basically we could deduce that 70% of people use a device while watching TV, which is a lot, actually. That's a really high percentage. So you can see, again, why people want to see how can we capture this. But for the Netherlands, that's about 3.5 million. And again, using the screens, they're not necessarily using a second screen app. They're just using their screen while they're watching TV, using their device. So from there, you look at your target market. And so we figured if you can capture 1% to 2% of those people, which doesn't seem like very much, but it's actually pretty ambitious, that would be about 35,000 to 70,000 users per night. Which, again, when you just do that, you already see it. It's not really that many people. But still, we figured, let's talk to more people, let's see what they would like or what they wouldn't like in a product like this, and keep going with our experiments. So at that point, it was just me. I say we, but it was really me. And then I brought on a designer and creative director, Lee, who is right here, Lee Chow. So, and I had worked with Lee on another project, and I had also seen her around at different lean startup things and agile workshops. And I knew that we had talked about wanting to implement a lean startup process with a larger client. So I brought Lee on, and not just as a designer, but also as a sparring partner. So we could talk about what is this product going to be, what's the personality of the product, what's the basic look and feel, what are we trying to accomplish, what are our user stories. So we spent some time figuring that out. And so the next thing we needed to do was develop our minimum viable product. So for those who aren't familiar with the minimum viable product, it's basically the least that you can build to test your assumptions. So it's as opposed to building out an entire product, and spending a lot of money and a lot of time before you even know necessarily if it's something that people are going to want. And so it's kind of an art figuring out what's the least you can do to actually get the most information. And so we started with a low fidelity MVP. But first, before we did that, we had to even come up with a name. So we didn't have a name, we didn't have anything. And we came up with Tappy. And some people really liked the name, some people didn't like it so much. Some Dutch people thought it was too cute, or they wanted more practical, like second screen app. But we wanted to make it really friendly, because like the other competitors, the ZBox, was more kind of computery and techy, and there wasn't even really anything sort of relate to. So that was our, we wanted bright, homey, happy branding. So we have our tagline here, you're out for fun, socializing information while you watch TV. And our differentiating factors are targeted relevant content. Again, as I said on our competitive research, we found that the content felt very generic. It didn't feel like it was actually relevant or targeted, and in order for people to pick up an app multiple times, it needs to be engaging. And then customize and personalize, because if you are going to pull out an app and use it all the time, you need to feel like it's what you want, and it needs to be something that you can get emotionally attached to, maybe make you feel less lonely. You have to look at all these things to actually compel somebody to pull out a product multiple times. And so there was also everything in one place, because part of the premise is you're looking up on IMDb, you're looking up on Wikipedia, you're doing your Twitter, you're looking up in the shops, and so it pulls it all together. And the other thing that's important is that from an interface perspective and from a look and feel perspective, we wanted it to be very clean and uncluttered. That's something that all the other apps seem to not be able to accomplish. They're very cluttered. It doesn't have like a nice graphic feel, and so that was one of our important things that we wanted to accomplish with our product. But we started out first with our first round low fidelity MVP, and so as you can see, it's just a landing page. That was our product, and we did this like in a day or something like that. And there was no technical people involved yet. We just used Unbounce as the tool for the landing page, and I think Unbounce is a really great tool. It's easy to just create a quick page, and you can do A, B versions. And it also has a lot of plugins, like we attached MailChimp to the subscription, so we could keep a mailing list, because that's what we were going to do with this, is see who's interested. It gives you something to go talk to people about the basic concept and see if they'll be willing to give you their email, for example, to be a beta tester. And that's how you can start gauging interest. But from a UX perspective, as you can see, we hadn't really worked out any of the details at all, because we didn't need to. That wasn't where we needed to spend our time. So we did a nice illustration that reflected the look and feel that we wanted and the product feel that we wanted. And we knew we sort of wanted some information and maybe some Twitter thingies and a shop. And so Lee was able to put this nice little illustration together that served as basically the thing that we could use to show people the basic idea. So from here, now we were ready to do our experiments. And that's a really important part of the customer discovery phase of the lean process, because you need to approach it in a structured, as scientific a way as possible, so you can keep an eye on your results. A great part about this project was that all of us startup founders had a coach, a lean startup coach. His name is Kees van Noonen, and he is really big on experiment design. And so I really learned a lot from him as far as how to set up your experiments in a way to where you can be as objective as possible and really make decisions based on the experiments that you're doing. So to set up an experiment, there's some steps, and this really helps to break it down. You identify your riskiest assumption, because that's what you need to test. Then you brainstorm different ways to test that assumption. Then you define your hypothesis. What do you think the result is going to be? Then you set your goal for the minimum success criteria. And this is important because you can go out and do your experiments and get your data, and you might be tempted to think that the data is good just because you sort of want it to be. But if you stick a stake in the ground ahead of time, then you know kind of if your results are good or bad, and it helps to keep you objective. And then you run your tests and you review and you decide if that's enough for you to go on with your product to the next level of testing or development. So now we're ready to start our tests with our landing page MVP. So, and a risky assumption can be really simple, like that people are even interested in it. I mean, it doesn't have to be that complicated. Are people even interested in this idea? So the test that we came up with is showing 20 Dutch people in Dutch because it's going to be Dutch programming. Our low fidelity MVP, which was our landing page, and ask for feedback. Very simple. And our hypothesis was that people would be interested, of course. And very simple percentage now that 5 people would submit their email addresses to be beta testers. And something to know about using email gathering as a metric is that sometimes it's more valuable than somebody even paying you money for something if they give you their email address, because it means that they trust you, and it means that they want to get more information about it. So it means a lot if someone gives you their email address. So I did have 5 people at least, so we were successful. So we figured we could keep testing, even though that was kind of an easy one. But again, we're still testing this assumption some more, that people are interested in a second screen app. So now doing something more general, because if you're walking around talking to people and smiling in their face and showing them something, they might give you their email address just out of pity or something, I don't know. So it's good to do it a little bit more anonymously, or not face-to-face, I mean. So I had 2 Dutch friends do a tweet to their networks about the app idea, approximately 400 person reach. Again, nothing too huge that anybody couldn't do. And again, we thought people would be interested enough to become part of our beta testers. And 20 people submitted their email address, and we figured that was a good percentage. And they did. So basically, people were telling us that they liked it. And that was good. So at this stage, we figured, okay, people said that they would use it. So we figured it was enough to keep going even more. So in addition to Lee, I brought on 4 interns, and these were really, really great interns. Then they were there to help do all the things that needed to be done, to help get our marketing out there, to help set up our social media, to help manage our beta testers. And so we were rolling. So again, still testing though. And I had the interns out helping me with some of these surveys and stuff too. And I'm not telling you all the tests either, because there are more than this even, but I don't want to bore you. So another one was talking to 65, quote, regular people about the idea. And a way that we could make it more concrete, still without actually building anything, we still haven't designed anything, keep in mind, is to show them our low fidelity MVP, which was that landing page with the illustration, and Zbox, the competitor that I told you about before, because their app exists, and it's basically what we're talking about doing. And so the combination of saying what our idea was and showing the competitor's idea will give them enough of an idea to give more concrete feedback. And so I went to Harlem because there's a lot of shops in a walking distance area. And if you need to talk to people, people working in a shop in the middle of the day are good people to talk to, because they generally don't have a lot going on, and they're happy to talk to you. So if you ever need a testing ground, that's a good one, because people also come from different backgrounds, different ages. So it was an interesting testing ground. And again, the hypothesis is they'll become beta testers, and that 50% of the people will submit their email addresses. And I didn't want to be as easy on myself this time, because before the percentages were 20% or something, so it's like, okay, we need a full 50% of people saying that they would give me their email address and that they would beta test this product. And so that was actually also validated. So we are feeling good now, and we're feeling like we have an idea that everybody is going to want to use as soon as we get it in the App Store. But one thing that that is important to realize is that talk is cheap. So there's a big difference in people saying that they'll use a product versus them actually using a product. And so that's a big leap that has to be made when you're in this stage of a new idea or doing a startup. So that's what you have to test. But now we still felt like we have enough information and we have enough validation to go ahead and start doing more of a mock-up of what our actual interface would look like and what the actual product would look like. And so we knew that we wanted 4 areas. We wanted information about the program. We wanted information about the that comes up during the program. And then we wanted a Twitter feed that's related to the show and a shop that has products related to what's happening in the program. And so we put together this screen. And we got it all in there, but then we realized why ZBox and these other ones are so cluttered, because it's kind of hard to get all that information in there. And so just some quick feedback that we got, it's too cluttered. We agreed. And so we worked on the next version and kind of upgraded our website a bit. Again, this is still using the tool. We still don't have any programmers involved. It's using the basic templates. And Lee came up with a really great 4-square kind of method that has the different kind of cards for each thing and with the navigation inside. And so that helped a lot, and people gave good feedback for that. And so at that point, it was time to, there are some other tests, but these tests validated that we should go ahead and do a real version for our beta testers and do a real beta test, because we had tested that people like the idea, and now we need to test that people will actually use it, which is the most important thing, really. So I got to work with this team, this great team in Budapest. This is a mobile development center of Sanoma. They create most of their apps, and I had a budget and I had to pay them, but they have good rates in Hungary. So and they know what they're doing. So I got to spend 2 weeks with these guys building a prototype. But in the meantime, actually let me stop. I'll just show you here in between these things, because this is the real design screen. But in between that, I won't go into detail on this, but so, like I said, this wasn't to test the UX, but we did have to do some interface design so our users would be able to navigate around it. So we had to find a balance for how much effort and time we were putting into the UX versus getting it out quickly. And I think we found a really good balance. And let me flip the China too. But we worked together to figure out, how everything would work. And she put together this guide for the programmers in Budapest, and they were able to take that and make the prototype. So, just to give you a quick idea of how the screens came out, this was the 4-square system. And part of our customized way to simulate customization, again, because if you're really going to do that, that would be elaborate. But we simulate it by, you can pinch open the section that's most interesting to you, and that becomes the main part of your screen. So that was our simple solution to that. So this shows each one of the screens blown out. And we made them, it didn't cost 190 euros for that, but that was a typo, but we left it because that's what you do when you're going fast. So those are the different screens. So then we did all the things that you do to make it look like you have a real company. You make your little demo video, you start getting your social media, your Facebook, Twitter, because we had started building actually a quite enthusiastic community of beta testers. Maybe 250 or something. But to us, that was pretty exciting that many people actually were interested. So I'll show you our video. And another interesting thing here is that We made this with no resources, used Keynote entirely to do it. One of the interns had never made a video or an animation or used Keynote, but he figured it out and did it. Very lo-fi, but I think it gets the point across.
Terwijl we televisie kijken, zitten we graag met onze tablet op de
And it's in
bank.
Dutch, sorry,
We
but
zoeken naar
it's
extra
visual.
informatie
So.
of praten tijdens de uitzending gezellig mee op Twitter. Helaas zijn die verschillende apps en websites wel onhandig, omdat je steeds moet wisselen. Zou het niet ideaal zijn als er één app bestaat die samen met jouw tv kijkt? Eén die alle relevante informatie voor jou verzamelt binnen één overzichtelijk scherm? Maak dan nu kennis met Tappy, jouw eigen second screen app, waardoor je niets meer mist van je favoriete tv-programma's. Tappy bestaat uit 4 categorieën die je tv-kijken nog leuker maken. Extra informatie, Twitter, een webshop en programma-informatie. Allereerst geeft Tappy je live extra informatie over onderwerpen die besproken worden in het programma. Ook kun je meer lezen over de gasten of de acteurs die te zien zijn in de uitzending. Wil je liever meepraten over het programma op Twitter? Ook dat kan eenvoudig via Tappy. Je kunt met je vrienden praten en in één oogopslag zien wat de meest besproken onderwerpen zijn. Daarnaast biedt Tappy iets wat helemaal nieuw is: een slimme webshop. Zie jij een leuk jasje voorbij komen op tv? Tappy vindt het meteen voor jou, zodat je het eenvoudig kunt kopen. Als laatste geeft Tappy programma-informatie, zoals een samenvatting van de uitzending. Op die manier kun je ook halverwege een programma nog gemakkelijk inschakelen. Wil je meer informatie? Kijk dan op www.tappy.tv.
So this is a good tool because we could use it to communicate with people about what we're doing and get more feedback and get more beta testers. So it's always good to have a little video. And again, we set up our Facebook page and getting as many people on that as we could, had our Tappy Twitter account. And one thing that the interns were doing was populating this with content about, because these were early adopters, that's one thing, if they're your early audience, you let them in on your process. You don't try to act like you're any further along than you are. You make them feel like they're a part of it. So we put news about second screen technology along with news about different TV programs, like what the app would be providing. We also had a newsletter that went out every so often to our beta testers to let them know what was going on, to keep people involved, and also to ask for their feedback and let them know that they could give us feedback about the idea. So more testing. One thing that's interesting to know is that you can do testing concurrently, and you should, because you can get a lot more done. So a lot of these tests were happening at the same time. One thing that we did was a performance-based ad campaign on Sanoma websites and on new.nl. So this was putting a banner ad basically through the Sanoma channels to see what kind of click-through rates we got. And again, we thought if people subscribe, that's a conversion. We thought we might get a 10% conversion, which would be good. Here's what one of our ads looked like. And so the results, 4,000 clicks and 2,000 conversions, excuse me. And I thought this was great. I was like, wow, 200 people actually gave their email address, and they're not even our friends and family. You know, they must really want this app. But this is another thing about the positive feedback that you're getting. Because if you're really passionate about your idea, you can tend to skew things toward the positive. And our startup coach helped me to look at this from a larger perspective, zoom out a little bit. There was actually 1.1 million impressions, and that means people that viewed the ad. So that's a lot. I mean, that's a lot of people viewing the ad. And out of all those people, 4,000 people actually clicked it only. So that's a click-through rate of 0.003, which is actually a really terrible click-through rate. Some of you might know that equals basically, statistically no people. So no one actually means nobody, and I thought it was good. So that shows you how you can really need to sanity check your data. And so we did get 200 conversions, but still. But even at that, it costs 10 euros to get each one of those. So that's a very high cost per customer. So this one's actually invalidated. So things are starting to not be much in happy land as we're doing our testing. But still, you keep going because that's not enough to kill it at this point. Another thing that we needed to test is that we can actually deliver the kind of content that people want to see, because there's a risk as far as people actually wanting the product, but then there's a risk on the other side of running a business of actually providing that product. Like, you need to know what is involved and what kind of work is involved, what kind of labor is involved in doing that. So that was something else that we were testing. We thought a way to do this without, again, we haven't built anything yet, so I'll make that clear. There's no product yet, and we're still able to do all this testing. We figured, why not use Twitter as kind of the app? Use it during a TV program, live tweet about the program, the kind of information that we would be putting through the app, and see how people respond. So we picked Didino Show. Does anyone know Didino Show? Yeah. I hadn't heard of it before, but it's a popular comedy variety show that's filmed in Rotterdam. It's really funny. And in the meantime, too, we had been monitoring and researching Twitter activity. That's one thing Remotely TV has, actually. They have a great little service. You can go on their website and see the top 5 shows that were tweeted about, mentioned in tweets each night. So we were keeping a record of that, and this one has a lot of Twitter activity. So we figured we'd be able to provide compelling, interesting content tidbits and get people to follow us. We figured we just came up with this test and did it like the next day. So if we get 10 new followers, we figured that would be good. So we made our Dino Show Tappy special account and publicized that we would be doing this. And during the show, the interns were putting out things, tweeting at people. They'd researched the show ahead of time because they knew who the guests were and stuff like that. But basically, they're calling it a flawed test because we got locked out because they thought we were spamming, we weren't, and they blocked us from getting new followers, so we couldn't really evaluate this. But still, we could tell that the reaction wasn't that great, really. So now the big assumption that we can deliver the kind of content that people want to see. This is where, during this time, building was happening, that we have our prototype of the app. It's in the App Store. It's a native iPad app, and it's something that we can actually test with. And it has a content management system on the back end for the interns to enter the content, so we can simulate what it would actually do as the real app. And there's actually user experience involved in creating that back end, because they have to be able to quickly pull the information, put it in the right category quickly enough, correct it if they need to, because it's all happening live. So that was an interesting exercise in user interface too. So this was the big one. This is what we're leading up to. 4-day test of this is now a high fidelity MVP. This is actually really simulating what the product would look and act like. And then track analytics and ask for user feedback. And the hypothesis is that people would react positive to the type of content that we put in, and that 50% of our beta testers would download the app and become active users. So we picked 4 programs, and we picked these again from monitoring the Twitter activity, and it's also 4 different types of programs. Excuse me. There's a soap opera, a comedy show, a sports kind of documentary show, and Best Singer-Songwriter, which is very popular. And we had a small fan base of our loyal users, so they were all excited about these tests happening. And so on the night of the first test, we were interacting with our users over Twitter. This is actually translated, Google Translate, but that was in Dutch. All the interns came to my house. Excuse me. That's my TV at home. We took and tweeted to people. So they didn't necessarily know that they were at my house, but they understood that we were all together doing this test together. So results. So out of the 260 download invitations that we sent, 125 people downloaded, and we had 73 unique users, which is, as far as percentage, that's an okay number. But the question is, would they keep using it? Because again, you have to have recurring users for it to matter. When we didn't find a lot of recurring users, that's the thing over the days. So even though we sort of hit the number, it wasn't overwhelming, enthusiastic support. While this is going on, there's the other important part is that I was looking at the business model for this, again, because that's the third question you need to answer is if we do solve the problem, is there a viable business behind it? And with the best model I could come up with using some statistics from some other popular Sanoma apps and products and the cost per customer and how much you can expect to earn per customer, the best I could come up with was like 97,000 euros per year revenue. And I was working with experts in Sanoma too to make sure I'm not just being pessimistic, and they had to actually correct some of my optimism. So, it costs more than that to produce the content and to obtain those customers. So that was disappointing, but that's something that you have to look at. So basically, it's invalidated. Even though we thought it was positive. Again, this is where you have to sanity check what you're doing and keep yourself objective. So basically, the recommendation, there are more tests than this, but the recommendation was not to carry on with the product. Based on the results that we got, it depends on what your goals are. Like somebody may have made a different decision. If it's something that you're really passionate about and you can keep working on it for a while, see where it goes, you don't necessarily have to make big revenue with it. It might be something that someone would decide to go forward with. But Sanoma, their goals were something that would be a big revenue generator quickly. Like they wanted 10 million over 5 years. And this was not going to reach that. So that's how that went. But there was good news. The good news is that people are interested. But again, with these tests, we were looking for very strong validation, one way or the other, and we didn't have that. The bad news is that quality content curation, which was one of our major differentiators, is labor intensive and it doesn't scale well. You need to have actually people behind it and people to manage those people until the technology gets a lot better. And then the very bad news is the revenue model, that it's just the way we looked at it, it wasn't there. So even though it looked promising, the other parts weren't adding up. So back to our original questions. So have we identified a problem the customer wants to see solved? I would say maybe. I think, again, it's a problem that a lot of people wish people had, but I don't know if it's a true burning problem. But does our product solve that problem or need? I mean, I'd say if it was a problem, our products solved it pretty well. I think, especially how quickly we had to do it, the way that the interface worked and the way the content worked, it got a lot of positive feedback. But if so, do you have a viable and profitable business model? And this did not. So again, if we had just gotten excited about how much people liked it when they talked to us, we may have made different decisions and maybe wouldn't have been as objective about it. So I guess the takeaways here are, if you're founding an idea or if you're starting your own product, you have to examine your own behavior because you're passionate about the idea, which is essential. I mean, you have to be really to be a founder of a startup. But you also have to take a scientific approach and have somebody else help you interpret the results. Get an outside opinion to help look at that information to help you make decisions on which way you should go. And again, it's about building as little as possible, spending as little money as possible to validate your idea and to validate if it's something that you should go forward with. But ultimately you have to decide what your goals are, and if it's passionate enough, you can make a decision based on that. So yeah, that's really the story of Tappy. And so thanks very much. Happy to answer questions, yeah.
Yeah, for the first rapid prototype,
Yeah.
how did you get exposure? Your test was to get 20 subscribers.
Yeah.
But how did you get it out there? Because it wasn't indexed by Google yet. How did you do it?
Using our networks.
just
personal
ask
networks.
friends and family.
Yeah, and because and also too like with all the people at Sanoma, and then with all of I'm involved with Amsterdam, and so there's a lot of people there, and I ask people to spread it through their networks, through their social media. So it was like organic basically at that point. Yeah, we did do Google AdWords later.
Sorry?
We did do Google AdWords later when we had more of the concept.
So this is the way.
Why did you choose the Netherlands? Why not one of the 10 other countries?
Well, the base of doing this operation is in the Netherlands, and the Netherlands can be a good test ground because people are really, there's a high usage of mobile devices and a high usage of people that are interested in media, and we were here, so it's easy to validate it that way. And if there had been, the numbers we got weren't just based on sort of, because I know there's a smaller population here, but we're looking at that as a percentage of people. So that's why. But yeah.
Would you encourage your beta testers to do their job?
Well, that's why the social media was so important and the newsletters. So that's why it was really good that I had the interns there because I needed people to focus on communicating with them, keeping a fun kind of feeling.
So it's just like the same amount of people who were testing, or it were like changing like crowd of people.
Well, the way it worked is we built up our beta tester list, and that's what all this email gathering was, and so they put it in and they become part of the subscriber list. And we use MailChimp, which by the way is a really great tool. You can use it to manage your newsletters and the click-through rates and what people click on and how many people open it and how many people unsubscribe, because every time you send out a newsletter, somebody's going to unsubscribe. But that's okay because we wanted our hardcore people there. But once we had that, we were letting everyone know, through our Facebook page, through our newsletters, we're going to do the test on this day. And so they all were able to download the app, basically, and use it over these 4 days. So we couldn't really tell exactly who used it, like on day 1 and 3, but we could tell that this was a unique user or not, and if so that way we could get a good idea of the recurring usage.
Can you please describe what kind of interfaces did you have on every stage and how much detailed it was? So how much work did you put on every stage? As soon as you were developing minimum valuable products, so probably you find this bottom line, which fast, easy, and still works. So what was it? What were your findings?
Well, the minimum value, of course every app has like a long list of features and things you want to have on it, and one thing that was incredibly important was to have customized and targeted information, and for that information to be uncluttered and accessible but not in your face all the time. Which is why we went with the 4 modules, so that you get one bit of information at a time and it changes with the show. But some of the things that we left out were like audio detection, so that your device could detect what the TV is playing, and so when the TV goes to commercial or something, then the device will detect that and then bring up more information than would be showing during the show, because during the show you want to be paying attention to the show. So then your screen would be pretty static at that time. So we left more complicated things out that were also more intense for development. So it's a lot of like understanding what we can make in the time that we have and budget, and also what is the most important for your product to be successful and be successful in being different and getting its functions functioning, I guess.
Yeah, that's
So
one of
that answers your question.
That's one of the biggest challenges, and I think we were able to work kind of organically, partially because, and that's another great thing about this, you have a really small team. And I basically had full approval ability. It was my company. So I didn't have to go ask somebody else, is it okay if we only do this or that? You know, it's more like, here's what we're doing. And so we got to just work together really closely and quickly, very, very immediately do things. So, you know, it was work. It was a lot of work, but it didn't take that long for how nice the designs are.
And it helps when you have only 2 people.
Yeah.
You know, when you have 5 people trying to make one decision, it takes a lot longer. When it's just me and Tara talking about it, we just say, oh, what do you think about this? Oh, I like this option over this option. Done. Do it. So that helps a lot too.
Yeah, and the design team in Budapest is, sorry, I'll let you talk. They were the ones that actually put the kind of finished design elements on it. So so Lee was able to focus mainly on the functionality and how the information would be presented and how it would work.
So you did start with a simple land page.
Yeah.
And when you saw that it's validated and you need to move forward, what was next? What kind of interface did you use next?
That's the PDF that you showed. So that was basically the wireframes. So I made a set of wireframes that show just functionality and very simple layout. And you know, the wireframes and also the final product don't look very complicated because we don't want to spend a lot of time on it. We're just focused purely on getting the point across. Even functionality is sacrificed slightly because if we can show you what the app does without thinking too hard, oh, should the button go here or should the button go there? You know, if it gets the point across, then that task is done. So for us, one of the important things was also intuitive navigation, so that while you're watching, you don't have to hit this button, you know, and then scroll through something and look for something, and you know, so everything's right there, big, easy to find, and you can just kind of browse as you're watching, or you know, you can also go more in depth if you want.
So with your beta testers, you use the kind of wireframes, but on the final stages of testing, you use almost real interface, right?
Well, yeah, and that's an important point too, is that we didn't actually test the interface with beta testers until we did the final, the big test I was telling you about, where we had the interns at my house and like all the users and stuff, the beta testers downloading the app. And because this wasn't about testing the interface, it was about testing the idea. Of course, the interface had to work well enough to allow people to test the idea, so that's the challenge.
I think the interface and the idea went hand in hand, as most apps do, especially for mobile. But so it's a balance, again, that you want to achieve, where you have enough of the interface to get the point across, and don't fuss too much about, you know, the details, because the details you can finesse later.
But you know, interestingly enough, the details worked out pretty well. Like, the interface worked incredibly well for something that was put together so quickly and that was so complex in a way, because it had automated content coming through that you could also disrupt and manually go through. It had 4 different types of content that was coming at you, and it worked really well. We did make a clickable just PDF prototype of this, and just showed it to. Again, we didn't go out and do a formal test. We just, hey, you in this office. Does that work okay? Yeah, I think so. Or no.
And again, I think it's important to have a small, very effective team of 2 or max 3 people, because then you're already on the same wavelength about what your goal is. And so, as the interface designer, I know that these are our goals, and I will design towards that goal, right? Even though I want to keep it as simple as possible.
Yeah, there was no like, oh, you're making it too complicated, because Lee had the same goal that I did, that the interns did, that we understood that we needed to do as little as possible to get the results that we needed. So.
How long did the whole process take?
The whole thing was a little less than 3 months, which for Sanoma is very good. I've heard legend, or it's actually like just regular true, that for a lot of their new products, they can spend a year just putting together the PowerPoint about it. And so when we gave a quarterly kind of presentation about this, and I was the only one that was recommending that we kill it. And I got a lot of praise for that, because they were like, this is exactly what we're trying to do. We're trying to do these things quickly, because if it had been the Sanoma before, they probably would have put a couple million euros into this idea, at least, because it's interesting and it's fun. And I had people from Sanoma even coming up to me like, are you sure? But it's so cool. It's like, yeah, but we have to actually make money now, like not like before. So it's a new way of thinking. But yeah, we did it very fast.
I'm sorry, I would stop
Okay.
questions. If they still exist, you can come after we would finish official presentation. Yeah, because pizza is here. It's getting cold. Yeah. And thank you very much for, I don't know, for me it was very pleasant presentation. I hope for you too.
I hope so too.
And I want to ask you to leave your feedback on our Meetup page and rate. We need this rating for some reason. And also I want to invite you for our next meeting in a month, first Wednesday of the month. It would be in booking.com. And the presentation would be about designing for kids. If you ever faced it or going to face, or you just want to expand your horizons, Sabina Idler from Usabila would present the whole idea about what is this category of users are, how you should include them into design and development process, what's interesting about it and what's special about it. So, should be interesting. You're welcome in a month. Thank you very much for coming.